Hello and welcome to today's ICENTD Connect meeting. It's World Science Day, organized by Unesco and celebrated across the world. And we're really delighted to have the opportunity on this Science Day to spend a little bit of time with all of you, with three fantastic speakers focusing on some of the gaps in neglected tropical diseases. World Science Day celebrates science in all its varied forms and its multifaceted approaches and collaborations. And what better topic to illustrate this huge force for good than schistosomiasis, all the way from the laboratory through to the funding aspect, but also all the way into the communities that are being treated, the volunteers that work to bring the treatment from the science all the way to society. That really ties in very nicely, we felt, with this year's topic and theme for World Science Day, which is science for and with society. So today we'll be talking about schistosomiasis, but more specifically, pediatric praziquantel, and this amazing journey to address one of the biggest gaps remaining really in the treatment of this neglected disease. And to speak about this today, we've got three wonderful speakers. Delighted to welcome you three today to this webinar, who will really take us on the whole journey from the gaps that are being looked at all the way to the work and the collaborations in the lab, and also the clinical trials, and where do we go from now. So a hugely collaborative body of work. This webinar is part of our series in collaboration with the Global Schistosomiasis Alliance, and we'll be looking at the work of the Pediatric Praziquantel Consortium. So really a great moment to reflect on the work of a huge number of partners and organizations focusing on this topic. So first and foremost, I'd like to welcome our speakers. We'll be hearing from Dr. Jutta Reinhard-Rupp. Hello, Jutta.
Hello, hello.
Jutta, you are head of the, hi, hello. Jutta, you're head of the Global Health Institute at Merck. And following from that, we'll hear from Dr. Remco de Vrueh. Welcome, Remco.
Thank you, welcome.
Remco, you are senior, oh, hi, sorry, slight lag in our line there. Remco, you're a senior program manager and portfolio lead in global health at Lygature. And finally, speaking from Nairobi, we'll be hearing from Dr. Maurice Odiere. Maurice, you are head of the Neglected Tropical Diseases Unit at the Kenya Medical Research Institute, or KEMRI. So a very warm welcome today to our three speakers. Hello, Maurice.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.
Hi. And of course, a very, very warm welcome to all our attendees who are tuning in from around the world. We've got Madi Borani, Ben Lukubiye, Justin Komgwep-Nono, Govert Van Dam, and many, many more. I can't say hello to everyone, unfortunately, but lovely to see you all here tuning in from around the world. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, Jutta. We'll be hearing from our three speakers, and then please, as usual, please don't hesitate to post any comments or your questions. We'll be rejoining after these three presentations for our Q&A. So in the meantime, Jutta, over to you.
Thank you.
And I look forward to catching up after these presentations.
Thanks a lot, Marianne. This is wonderful. And thanks to ISNTD Connect for this opportunity to present the consortium. And special thanks to the Global Schisto Alliance, to GSA. I could see just on the chat room that colleagues are joining. Colleagues are really joining around the globe. This is fantastic. I could see our Brazilian colleagues joining in. Thank you so much. I'm giving the introduction to this session, and I would like to start with our day-to-day. So today is November 10th, and this day is dedicated to the UNESCO World Science Day for Peace and Development. And this year, the World Science Day has a special topic. It's the topic of science for and with society. So the day goes back to the year 2001, and since then has generated many concrete projects and programs and funding for science around the world. The day has also helped to foster cooperation between scientists living in regions marred by conflict, and to foster collaboration between scientists from the global north and south. Therefore, let me read what the introduction of the UNESCO World Science Day says. By linking science more closely with society, World Science Day for Peace and Development aims to ensure that citizens are kept informed of developments in science. It also underscores the role scientists play in broadening our understanding of the remarkable, fragile planet we call home, and in making our societies more sustainable. And furthermore, now, when we read the four main objectives of the World Science Day carefully, this day comes with a very important message for us in the year 2020. Let me read with you these four objectives, and I have just a few comments for each of those objectives. So objective number one is strengthen public awareness on the role of science for peaceful and sustainable societies. So for me, this objective is the dialogue between science and society, which is more important than ever. And despite the fact that we will talk about other infectious diseases today, I have to mention that the current pandemics of the coronavirus shows us how trust into science can be hampered by spreading fake news, making mischief, fueling conspiracy and fears, or even misusing it for political agendas. The second objective is to promote national and international solidarity for shared science between countries. Again, here, politics may hamper collaboration across borders, but science should be independent of country borders, should enable people with different backgrounds to work together in order to solve a global problem. And such a global problem is something like a disease, a global disease. The third objective talks about to renew national and international commitment for the use of science for the benefit of societies. So with that objective, I clearly see governments and international organizations being asked for their commitments. And again, with COVID-19, we all can read a lot about commitments. But what is important with commitments is the transitioning to implementation. How do we ensure that all societies benefit equally from health solutions? And the last objective says, draw attention to the challenges faced by science and raising support for the scientific endeavor. This objective tells me about the importance of transparency in science. We need to be transparent of risk, and we need to communicate about failures in order to manage expectations. Again, the constructive dialogue with society is of utmost importance. Now, all these four objectives can be easily linked to our fight against COVID-19, but today I would like to link these objectives to those infectious diseases that are with us for centuries, if not even longer. And this brings me to the field of neglected tropical diseases, the so-called NTDs. And many of you are fully aware of what I'm talking about. And we have selected one for today's session. When we talk about neglected tropical diseases, we talk about diseases of most neglected populations. So these populations live in poverty. They do not escape the vicious cycle of disease and poverty. They often live in very rural settings. And even if affordable health solutions would be available, the difficulty remains to provide access to those solutions. So for today, we focus on one of these NTDs. It's called schistosomiasis, also known as snail fever or bilharzia. Elimination of schistosomiasis is a long-term goal with many pillars and players required to achieve it. And the WHO roadmap for 2030, which should be launched soon, gives great guidance on what it requires. And one requirement is preventive chemotherapy for the disease. So just more than 10 years ago, we at Merck started a donation program of praziquantel, which is the drug of choice for this preventive chemotherapy. And together with WHO, we are able to reach most vulnerable groups. These are the school children, and we provide regular treatments in areas that are endemic for schistosomiasis. And again, most of you are aware that this disease is mainly endemic on the African continent, but of course also in Brazil and some Asian countries. At the same time, we learned that another vulnerable age group, the so-called preschool age children, are left out of treatments. And that's probably simply due to the fact that praziquantel in its current format is not suitable for the treatment of younger children. The need for pediatric formulation was raised in several WHO meetings and resulted in a WHO recommendation of need for treatment of preschool age children that came out in 2011. But how should we address this issue of a missing pediatric formulation? Is it just a simple technical hurdle? So if so, which type of formulation should we develop? Syrup, mini tablets? But then beyond the technical solution, when such a formulation would be available, who is going to pay and who is in charge of providing access? So a few people from the public and private sector were scratching their heads in 2012. And very quickly we realized that this is not just simply another formulation. We need expertise about the disease, about the countries, and especially about the patients. It was the start of involving partners from many different organizations, the public sector, the countries, the private sector, with the aim to build a public-private partnership, or PPP. So going back to where I've started, today is UNESCO World Science Day. And I hope you will agree with me that our project demonstrates what we in science can do for and with society. Building a public-private partnership with different partners, different expectations. That will be the topic now of Remco de Vrueh from Lygature, who will explain to you the exciting journey of our pediatric praziquantel consortium. I'm handing over to Remco.
Thank you very much, Jutta. I think you've really shaped the priorities of this community within this really important and broad science for society and with society framework. So thank you so much for that. And of course, echoed as well just recently with Dr. Tedros's words at the opening of the World Health Assembly this week, where despite many of the hurdles, including COVID, the objective really remains on reaching the 3 billion targets and universal healthcare, etc. So it's always very important to think of these within the broader and bigger frameworks, whether it be sustainable development goals, whether it be peace and development, as UNESCO wants to remind us. So over to Remco, whenever you're ready. Give you a few minutes to switch on your camera and microphone, which I can't do from my side, which is very reassuring from a privacy point of view.
There we go.
There we go. Over to you, Remco.
So much for technology. So those that don't know me, I'm a senior program manager at Lygature, which is a not-for-profit scientific foundation. And we're one of the founding partners of the Pediatric praziquantel consortium that Jutta was just that Jutta just mentioned. And I've been part of the consortium for the past 7 years, basically coordinating it. And it's a real honor, but also a pleasure to share with you the story of the consortium, also on behalf of the consortium. For those that still don't know us, the consortium's mission is to develop, register, and provide access to a suitable pediatric praziquantel formulation for treating schistosomiasis in preschool-age children. As Jutta already mentioned, that's a group that's currently devoid of an appropriate treatment. And what Jutta said about the partners, that's important to understand, because apart from Merck and Lygature, Swiss TPH and Astellas already joined in 2012 to address the WHO call for action that was just mentioned by Jutta. However, at that point in time, we already knew that we would need additional expertise at the various stages that lie ahead of us. So in 2012, we already signaled that. And since that time, we have had 5 additional partners joining the consortium. Pharmaginos and SIPSIP joined end of 2013. The Schistosomiasis Control Initiative joined in 2016. And the UFAB and KEMRI joined beginning of 2018. And I will tell a little bit more about these partners during my talk on exactly what they're doing. When you look at the overall development program, that's basically, I would say, a standard clinical development program consisting of 5 main sub-programs: preclinical, clinical, active pharmaceutical ingredient and drug product development, regulatory affairs, but also communication and engagement, which is very important in the area of global health. The program is managed by a core project team that meets every month and in which all the partners and key functionalities are represented. On top of that, each sub-program has its own team to run the day-to-day activities. So I don't have an exact number, but I think that at least 100 people are currently working on this project, spanning a total of 15 time zones and 4 continents. All are extremely motivated and passionate about the project reaching its goal. On top of that, we have always relied on independent external advice, and from the audience, I see that a couple of them have also joined, so that's really good. If you would like to know more about how we do that and why we do that, I can highly recommend a 2017 publication from the consortium in PLOS NTD. It includes details of the various meetings that we have organized and also how we did that. But basically, during each stage of the project, we try to have an expert meeting around a specific topic and bringing in the right experts that can basically give us the answers to questions that we have. Being a pharmaceutical scientist by training, I always like to share the story from the formulation perspective and what it takes to progress the project to its current stage, phase 3 clinical trials. And here, I really would like to emphasize the importance that although praziquantel has been around for decades, developing a child-specific formulation requires a complete and new formulation and clinical development program. Looking back, I think the most important topic, and already mentioned by Jutta, was discussed already back in 2012 with experts. What would be the suitable formulation? At that point in time, key properties like taste, size, stability, price, etc. were already discussed. And based on expert input, the consortium actually made 2 decisions. 1, to develop a small oral dispersible 150 milligram tablet formulation with acceptable taste properties and which withstand the challenges of the tropical climate. But also, and this is also important to emphasize, on top of that, as a risk mitigation, it decided to develop 2 formulations. For those that are, for the chemists among us, one with the racemic mixture of praziquantel and the other one containing the biologically active levo, praziquantel and enantiomer. The formulation development has really been a joint venture between Astellas, Pharmaginos, and Merck. With the original formulations being developed back in 2012 and 2013 within the formulation labs of Astellas in Japan, it was then brought through a technology transfer to the labs in Germany at Merck, as well as in Brazil at Pharmaguinhos, where further optimization and scale-up has been done. And the current clinical GMP batches are being manufactured in Brazil. In parallel, it's important to share that drug development actually consists of two elements. The drug product and the formulation is one, but Merck also made a huge effort to successfully develop and manufacture the levo praziquantel active ingredient in accordance with the current regulatory standards. And here I would specifically mention one organization within the Merck organization, which is Merck Performance Materials, which has done a lot of that work. As already mentioned, all drug, but completely new formulation, which basically results then in a full phase 1 to 3 development program that we set for ourselves. The core of that specific program, the trial program, revolves around Swiss TPH, Merck, KEMRI, UFAB, and these partners really ensure an appropriate regulatory trial program framed in what I would call a local context. In addition, outstanding pharmacological modeling expertise has been provided by Simcyp and Astellas. Again, here we've done expert meetings looking at the clinical trial trajectory as well as the regulatory trajectory back in 2013 and 2014. But on top of that, we have also engaged from the start already in 2012 with regulatory authorities, meaning that we have interacted with the FDA, the German regulator, EMA twice, the ANVISA twice, and we will continue to do so until this product has given the regulatory clearance. Regarding the clinical trial program itself, there are many, many highlights that I would like to share with you, but I will limit myself to two. One, we've been talking about taste. For those that have tasted praziquantel, the original one, I hope that you can concur that that is really a very bitter tasting formulation. At the same time, I've also had the privilege of tasting the new formulation, and there is really a huge difference in taste sensation. And we confirmed that, because it's nice that I feel like that, but we confirmed that also in an official clinical trial involving young children in Tanzania. And it sounds like a very, very straightforward study, but I can still remember in 2014 the extensive team discussions that we had on the implementation of an appropriate scoring framework, and to make sure that this study had sufficient power, statistical power, to be able to make a difference in tasting sensation between the original formulation and the new formulations. For more details, also this has been published in 2019, and I think my colleague Daniela from communication is sharing those links with you through the chat. Second, I think has been the major achievement for this consortium was the conclusion of the phase 2 trial, in which we really tested both formulations head-to-head, also with biltoside in different doses. And that the outcome of that trial really led to the decision by the consortium to continue with the levo praziquantel formulation and continue that program into the confirmatory phase 3 trial in Kenya and Cote d'Ivoire, which is currently ongoing. What I would like to share also with you is that, and many of you will probably recognize that, but performing these trials under often difficult resource-limited settings has not been an easy task. And we have shared our phase 2 operational experience in another publication in 2019. Maybe this is an example now that I would like to highlight also what Jutta was mentioning, that what we try to do as a consortium is really not only share results, but also share experience that we've had, so that there is a learning for the whole global health community, but especially the schisto community. Having said that, we are in the phase 3 trial. And in case of a successful outcome of the clinical program, we aim to submit to the EMA in 2022 and obtain a positive Article 58 opinion from the EMA in 2023, followed by WHO pre-qualification and local regulatory approval in the first African priority countries. Apart from EMA, we are also targeting to have a market authorization application submitted in Brazil. Apart from the team, the partners, the experts, WHO, the regulators, on and on, I think reaching the current phase 3 trial would not have been possible without the strong support from our 3 main co-funders over the years, the Gates Foundation, EDCTP, and the GED Fund. And at this point in time, I would like to give a sincere thank you to all these 3 funders, which has really been instrumental for making the progress that we've made. Does the story end here? Well, I can give an unequivocally answer no, because parallel to the development program, which I just highlighted, is that we have also been discussing within the consortium for what we would do with the future access of this formulation as early as 2015. Since roughly 2018, we have set up a dedicated access team with representatives of all the partners. And in the last couple of years, we've been really fortunate to get the support from the WHO NTD department, who has organized expert meetings around access, and which we have joined to present our results and strategy. So for that, I thank the WHO organization a lot. And what's the next step in that part is that since the second half of 2019, the access team has been putting in place an operational research program in Kenya, Côte d'Ivoire, and another African country, which needs to be determined. I cannot mention more at this stage of what the details of the program are going to be, but I can tell you that we plan to share more details on it in the next couple of months. So I would say, please visit our website whenever you can, because we will share this information on the website as well through news items. Having said that, I'd like to close off my talk with the following. Having been part of this great partnership for the greater part of its existence, because I've been part of 7 of the 8 years, I can say that the importance of endemic country participation in a program like the Pediatric praziquantel Consortium is pivotal, both as partners as well as external experts. They have always been part of the expert meetings from the start in 2013 and 2012. This is also why, for me, it's a great pleasure to hand over the story to my dear colleague from KEMRI, Maurice Odiere. Thank you.
Thank you, Remco, and absolutely, we're looking forward to hearing now some more insights from clinical trials from the researchers in endemic countries. So, Maurice, we'd love to welcome you now for your presentation. Maurice, the classic, your microphone is off. The rite of passage in every webinar.
You can hear me now?
Great. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Cool.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, Remco and Marianne, for the introduction. My pleasure to be part of this important ISNTD Connect webinar, and I hope I can carry the story from where Remco has just left. I am a research scientist at the Kenya Medical Research Institute. We are based out at the Center for Global Health Research in Western Kenya, which is one of the 12 KEMRI research centers. As Remco pointed out, KEMRI joined the consortium as a partner in the first quarter of 2018. KEMRI is a state corporation, the national body that's responsible for carrying out health research in Kenya, and has been conducting research for over 4 decades now. KEMRI is the medical research arm of the government and provides advice to the Ministry of Health on various aspects of healthcare and delivery. As Remco mentioned, the API and drug development is just but one of the 5 main sub-programs of the overall development program. The API and drug development program has 4 major steps: the preclinical development stage, the clinical development, registration, and access. And KEMRI is actually involved in the latter 3. So the current phase 3 study, of course, falls within the clinical development phase, and I'll give a brief on that momentarily, but I think it will suffice to mention at this stage that KEMRI is involvement is that it provides the expertise on local disease epidemiology, the expertise on conducting clinical trials and clinical care, and is also responsible for conducting the trial in Kenya according to ICH, GCP, and national and local regulatory and ethics standards. KEMRI also provides the necessary infrastructure and also brings on board significant experience in terms of conducting studies in young children living in remote areas of extreme poverty and who have these chronic and debilitating infections such as schistosomiasis. KEMRI also brings on board experience in terms of mobilizing communities in some of these endemic areas to participate in research. So we're really happy to be in Kenya. At the coastal region, we mainly have Schistosoma hematobium, and then parts of our central and lower eastern areas, we have both species, both Mansoni and hematobium. And then in the
I'm afraid it looks as though Maurice's connection just dropped out momentarily. But
Hi.
You're back, Maurice,
yes,
right?
Back. Sorry, I think the internet, erratic internet. Yeah, you can hear me now.
Yeah, we can hear you very well. We can't see you. Both are back now.
Sorry, yes, I'll just pick it up from where I was. I was just mentioning that we have three main endemic areas that are recognized in Kenya. The coastal region, where we have mainly hematobium, parts of central and lower eastern, where we have both species, Mansoni and hematobium, and then the Lygature basin, where we are based, where we have Mansoni, but we have some pockets of hematobium further inland. In terms of the population affected, we're talking about approximately 6 million people infected in Kenya, and about 15 million are at risk. Now, specifically with regards to preschool-age children, it's estimated that about 0.3 million preschool-age children are infected, and this is considered to be a conservative estimate. With regards to the control strategy, just like other endemic countries, preventive chemotherapy remains the cornerstone of control, where there's periodic treatment that's provided through mass drug administration to school-age children. Now, what you recognize in this aspect is that then the preschool-age children are left out of this routine annual MD exercise or biannual exercises, and the consequence of this is of this systematic exclusion of PSACs is that beyond the direct negative impact on their health, they remain as an active reservoir of infection and likely potentially will jeopardize our elimination efforts. So I'd just like to mention a little bit about the phase 3 clinical trial that is currently ongoing in Kenya. It's a multi-country study in Kenya and Cote d'Ivoire. So the study is an open-label phase 3 efficacy and safety trial of level praziquantel or dispersible tablets in schistosoma infected children 3 months to 6 years of age. And it includes a 2-to-1 randomized control cohort of S. Mansoni infected children who are aged 4 to 6 years. We commenced the study in September of 2019. The study is currently being conducted in Homa Bay County, which is an area that's endemic mainly for Mansoni, but again, like I mentioned, with some pockets of hematobium further inland. The target population, as I mentioned, is children aged 3 months to 6 years. And the clinical facility where we're actually carrying out the clinical activities is at the Homa Bay Teaching and Referral Hospital, which is a well-equipped level 4 MOH health facility. And we're also working closely with the Division of Vector-Borne Diseases Parasitology Lab, which again points to the critical importance of partnerships, not just at the international level, but also in-country and local collaborations. In terms of the progress so far, studies were actually paused in March due to the current COVID-19 pandemic, but preparations are in top gear now to resume activities. We expect, or we anticipate to complete or to have the last patient last visit in the third quarter of 2021. That's likely sometime around July of 2021. Now, before I wrap up, I think it will be important for me to just touch briefly on why it's critical to have country-level input in such a project of such a magnitude. I think the first point that I'd like to point out is that ability of being able to harness or leverage on the expertise on local disease epidemiology and experience is really critical. This will ensure that the studies are conducted according to good GCP and ethical guidance and regulations. Ultimately, just ensuring that the well-being and rights of participants who are enrolled in the trials are protected. Again, the context-specific issues are better understood when you have participation of these local endemic countries. The second point is, I think the country-level participation ensures that the trials are designed to reflect the public health needs and priorities of the countries in which the trials are carried out, and also address some of the specific culturally sensitive ethical issues. I mean, some of these ethical issues that we need to think about is issues around whether adequate informed consent has been obtained from trial participants, issues around trial reimbursements as compensation for trial participation, trial insurance, issues around standard of care. Some of these things look small, but things like legally accepted representative mean a totally different thing in some of these settings when you look at that and compare the term like a guardian. So some of these things are, become very critical when you have local country person, because then they can be addressed adequately. The third reason why it's important to include country level participation is that it ensures that strategies are aligned also with the local regulations, and and also fosters local credibility and trust. So this ensures that the process is all inclusive, which again fosters dialogue among the different stakeholders. The fourth reason, which is critical in terms of why we need to include a local country level participation, is that it also helps build or develop clinical trial infrastructure capacity building. Setting up of a new clinical trial sites or even revamping or upgrading existing clinical trial sites. So this also feeds into the aspect of ensuring sustainability and developing clinical trial infrastructure for subsequent or future research. The fifth point as to why country level participation is important is that it ensures compliance with the local regulatory requirements, both at ab initio before the trials start, but also downstream in relation to aspects to do with registration of some of these products, registration, procurement, and delivery issues, including when you start considering technology transfer to contract manufacturing organizations who are targeted in these countries, because this is very critical. As we have tech transfers, it ensures that there will be self-sufficiency in terms of product manufacturing, and which will then serve to meet the needs of these communities without requiring external support. And then the sixth reason why it would also be important to have country level input in such projects is, especially in low middle income countries, comes with its own fair share of challenges, and this can be amplified or even enhanced by cultural and geographical differences. But as I pointed out in the first point, that harnessing the local knowledge and expertise can also have a significant positive effect in mitigating some of these challenges. So, such that if you bring on board some of this participation by local countries, then it ensures that we can find solutions that might be locally tailored to address some of these challenges in a timely manner. So that's what I wanted to share today, and I will yield back to Marianne. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maurice, and thank you as well, Jutta, Remco. That was really, really interesting, particularly having your perspective, Maurice, on this. There's been a lot of food for thought there. Before we kind of delve into discussions, I just wanted to flag a little bit more detail on the Pediatric praziquantel consortium. So these are the partners involved, and I think it's now behind you, Remco, but there is a a message there of acknowledgements and thanks. Perhaps if we shrink and now move to one side, this will give our attendees the opportunity to read this. So once again, a massive thank you to all of you for this. And Maurice, actually, one of the first questions here that have been posed on the chat by one of our attendees, Stephen Bramer from Canada. Stephen was wondering, and relates to, how does your research link to any other research in Africa? Obviously, you mentioned the clinical trials collaboration with Côte d'Ivoire, but I thought it'd be interesting to perhaps hear a little bit more in general about how do the consortium's efforts to develop this child-friendly formulation, how would that fit into a sort of broader research and public health agenda and priorities in Kenya? That was a question for Maurice. Hopefully your connection's still okay. But
yeah.
well,
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, so you can hear me?
All good.
Yes, yes. So, I mean, that's an important question. I think at the regional level, I think just the fact that we have a multi-center trial, I think that already is a plus in terms of the exchange of knowledge and between some of these sites and standardization of the clinical trial sites. So there's a lot of exchange of ideas, and both in terms of just setting up and dealing with some of these challenges. And of course, some will be very specific to the sites and others will cut across. So we have a very rigorous process where we exchange continuously with some of the countries in the region as well. In terms of how it fits in within the health and research priorities for Kenya, is that what you're asking? I think it aligns very well overall with the Kenya government's national health goals, specifically UHC, Universal Health Coverage, where the government of Kenya has prioritized UHC as one of its big four agenda over the 5-year period, so 2017 to 2022. And also it aligns very well with Kenya's MOH NTD program's breaking transmission strategy, which seeks to introduce an integrated approach or synergy in the control and elimination of for the PC NTDs that are amenable to P-amenable NTDs. Specifically in terms of increasing MDA coverage, both in terms of geographic and therapeutic, but also just increasing the treatment coverage from the traditional practical target of the school children to include other at-risk groups. So these are PSACs, women of childbearing age, other special groups. So that also helps in that regard. And then, of course, it also closer, home here at KEMRI. This also aligns very well with KEMRI's mission, which is to improve human health and quality of life through research, capacity building, innovation, and service delivery. Actually, KEMRI has a dedicated infectious and parasitic disease program that specifically focuses on developing tools and technologies for reduction of diseases and disease burden due to some of these disease agents. So that's basically what I think it fits in with the whole dynamic, both regionally and also in country.
Brilliant. Well, in any case, this huge body of work and this collaboration has been incredibly impressive. You've taken us through the whole journey, and that this is amazing, particularly aligning such very different partners, whether it be big pharma, whether it be funders, and so forth. And perhaps we could open up a little bit the discussion. I'm sure clinical trials in their own right have a huge amount of challenges that you're faced with, but in a more broader sense, what might have been some of the main challenges as a consortium that you had to overcome to get this far? And this ties in very nicely to a question from Bonnie Webster here from the Natural History Museum in London. Hello, Bonnie, who's asking, lack of continued funding from one developmental stage to the next can present barriers. Could you give more detail on how you and your funders have enabled the continued support, and what funding hurdles do you see going forward? So over to you. What, each from your own perspective, what have been some of the main hurdles and how did you overcome this as a consortium?
Should I start?
Yeah, perhaps Jutta, you go first.
Yes, I think it's very difficult to get the first fund. If it's not, your project is at the very beginning, you promise a lot, you need to convince the funder. I think the start was very difficult. With a first, let's say, smaller fund that we received from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, actually, it was more on the technical side. It helped us a lot to talk to other funders. And I think with each milestone that we achieved, there was more and more, let's say, confidence from the funder side in what we are doing. And I think it's absolutely correct what Bonnie is saying. You do not have a funder that says, fantastic, we go with you all way. This is normally not happening. I think what we built was really a great relationship and trust with our funders, reaching the milestones, explaining very transparently when we saw delays, why we had delays. And this level of trust helped us really from face to face. And Remco, you may want to add.
No, you're absolutely right. I think one of the things that we have always done from the start is that within a certain phase or stage, we already had a part or an integral part which focused on, okay, what additional expertise and resources would we need in the next stage? So going from phase 1 to phase 2, for example. And would that be different partners or new partners? And what kind of funding would we then require? But this is a development program, so it is a matter of going from one stage to the next. So there is no big bag of money sitting there, which basically drives the whole program all the way to the end. That is the reality that we're in. But what I've seen here indeed is that, yeah, we do build on success. So we started with Gates. Then we were very, very lucky, I have to say, that we got the first GIAT grant, which was just starting up by the time that we were starting up as well. And that resulted then in continuous support from the GIAT. And then also that opened up the possibilities to expand our funding sources into EDCTP. So I would say if there are lessons learned here, plan ahead of, okay, what do you need, and make sure that you have that in place. But at the same time, for at least from the praziquantel consortium, as I see it as the project I run, getting the funding in place was not so much the time limiting factor. It was much more the operational part and the delays because of all kinds of things happening in countries, or in this case, for instance, the corona situation, which obviously has an impact on our timelines as well. But that does not stop us of already looking for, okay, but what comes after that? Addressing the question, what do you see in the future? Well, the operational research program that I've briefly mentioned, we're basically completing the final details on that, which we basically did in the corona time period. So on the one hand, we do have delays in one part of the project, but we continue with other parts which we can continue. So not to lose time over the whole trajectory, basically.
Brilliant. And Maurice, anything you'd like to add to this? Your microphone's off again.
Sorry, I was just saying that I think Jutta and Remco have addressed the issue of funding from whatever, and I think that's fine.
Thank you. Thank you all. There's quite a few questions and a bit of concern about getting the treatments now to the actual children. So just shifting topics slightly, we've got a question here from Amaya Bastin-Dui from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, who first of all thanks you for your presentation and is asking, how do you see the operational rollout of the pediatric formulation happening? Is this through health centers, immunization days, etc., or through community-based MBA? And if I may perhaps add to that a sort of a related question, but that's been sent in to us from CBM Global Disability Inclusion. And Teresa Baird at CBM was wondering about the availability and use for older children, particularly in special needs schools, and adults with disability who might find swallowing a pill difficult altogether. So that's a slight different problem, but just overall, how do you see the treatment reaching the actual children?
If I may,
yeah, Remco, please.
So a quick answer to the question of Amaya. That is something that we have basically included in the program. So probably if she raises the question again, I don't know, in a year or 2 years from now, we will be able to probably answer that. But that's really where the access team is now also putting focus and emphasis on. Understand indeed, okay, what would be the most optimal platform? What would be basically the best way? And maybe I will leave the other question to Jutta on future access.
And just to add, I mean, with the school program, the platform is clear. It's the school, right? When you have your deworming for school-age children. For the preschoolers, this really depends on the country setting. So what we are learning, and that's a bit our task for the next 2-3 years on the operational research side is, what if we look into a given country, what would be the best platform? And this could be child health days, immunization, you name it. But it is not one solution that fits all. And that also answers a question here from a colleague: how long can the consortium last for if after this project? So from a Merck perspective, 8 years ago, I think I told my manager, you know what, it's a small project, in 5 years it will be done. The reality is different, and it will go beyond 2020 because we do not want to develop and register and launch a product, and at the end, we do not reach these younger children. So this question of access is really important to all of us. So all the consortium members, partners, plus new partners joining in now are really dedicated to the second phase of this program, which is about access. So for how long, I cannot say, but for probably longer than I thought in the beginning.
Fair enough. Thank you. And I just going back to Teresa's question about the older children in special needs schools or such adults. It's also, she's added that it's because also these schools often don't even make it onto the list of schools to be treated. So again, something to be looked at probably in the wider context of things. Something very important that's been flagged here by Frank Richards. Frank, I'm sorry if you don't mind to add your affiliation. I am not sure of that, so that would be really helpful. But Frank Richards says, I'm very interested in the taste study. And I keep hearing about this legendary bitterness of the praziquantel tablet. I have been fortunate enough not to come across this. But Frank says, I encourage everyone to bite into a praziquantel tablet. Try just 1/8 of it, or you will be sorry. I'm not sure of the design of these studies, but as a pediatrician, I'm very worried about young kids gagging on a bitter medicine. And I know this is something that you've been working on very specifically. So perhaps you could give us a little bit more insight into that.
Yes, maybe I start. Absolutely, the taste in younger children, it is an issue, and most of us know this. For this study, we did not reinvent the wheel. We joined a group that was experienced because they did a very similar study with a malaria product, with Coartem, actually. And our study design resembled this Coartem study, and we had interesting conversation with Novartis at that time how to design the study. So absolutely, taste is important. I would say this new formulation, the pediatric one, has an improved taste. You need to find a balance between the taste of a medicine and a taste of something that is sweet and that they would like to take more than one, maybe. So it has still a taste of a medicine. It's not a cookie or something like this. If you are interested, I think we have published the study, the taste study. It's really an interesting one. I mean, asking, and these were not the very young children because that is not possible. We had to go in the age group of 6 years and above to get their input, and they had to justify it with smileys and so on. So a very interesting part of the program.
Brilliant. And Frank's just added that he's from the Carter Center and is a senior advisor on Schisto, so perhaps you already know each other. Well, we're nearly coming up to the end of the time allocated for our webinar. However, I think we have time for one more question. Just to squeeze in there a last question from Hermine Jutta. Hello, Hermine, who's saying, thank you for sharing progress on pediatric praziquantel with us. And Hermine's asking, what is the next step after clinical trials phase 3? Will you need more trials before the marketing of this formulation?
Do I make a start? Yeah. We are currently in the phase 3 trial, as Maurice mentioned, in Kenya and Cote d'Ivoire. That should provide the confirmation of the results that we got from the phase 2 trial, which would then mean, and this is what we are currently also discussing, is then there would be the next step is to submit the dossier to the EMA. But of course, as all clinical trials, it all depends on the outcome of the phase 3 trial, whether that indeed provides the data. So we cannot say anything about the outcome at this point in time because we really don't have it. But we always take precautions on, okay, what if interim analysis, all those things are included, because we want to make sure that we don't lose time if we get a result that might not confirm the phase 2 trial. I'm not saying anything about that that's the case. We are very confident, but at the same time, being confident and being prepared to do two different things. So we also want to be prepared. We owe it. We owe it to our funders. We owe it to the patients that we basically want to service. So we always have backup plans, etc. That if there is a need, that we can also do additional work as required.
Thank you. Jutta, Maurice, any last words to add to this?
I would like to thank, I saw on the chat that we have our partners from Ivory Coast, from Brazil joining. We could not have all the partners on stage today, but as Remco was saying, I think we were presenting on behalf of the consortium. So I really wanted to thank all our partners, all the supporters, and we are still on a marathon, but we are getting closer. Thank you.
Yeah. A lot of thank yous from all our attendees for taking us through this. Maurice, any final comments?
Yeah. Just from my end, just to appreciate the partnership so far. I think the initiative is great. So far, everything is going very well. We look forward to completing the trial and to sharing the interesting findings from this trial at the appropriate time. So we hope we'll be coming back to the Schisto Global community to share the findings again in the very near future.
Absolutely. We'll be ready and keeping an eye out for that, and perhaps welcoming you back to an ICE-NTD Connect update regarding next steps. It's been a very short amount of time to cover a really massive project, but we've tried our best, and thank you very much to our speakers. Thank you to our attendees, and also a very special thank you to Anouk Guvras from the GSA, as well as Daniela Bonora from Lygature, who have posted a huge amount of resources in the chat function. If you're able to scroll through those links to various websites, but also to some of the studies that have been mentioned during this talk, and also additional materials, whether it be webinars or reports or blog posts surrounding all the issues, including fake news, all the way to age gaps in schisto control and so forth. So even the chat is a highly collaborative affair. So this is perfectly reflective of this whole community. And so on that note, I'd like to thank everybody and wish you all very well, and hopefully let's catch up very soon and to hear more about the next steps in pediatric praziquantel. But until then, goodbye to everyone, and thank you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.